Should we have a look about Sheffield Wednesday? Because one thing that I was quite curious about to hear from you, Ollie, is you actually wouldn't write off Sheffield Wednesday entirely, where probably most Championship pundits would. So just talk us through that a little bit.
It's an interesting one, isn't it? And it was one of those where when I was putting my 1 to 24 together, I knew that for all the credibility of myself, of the show, of the entire thing that we do, I had to have Sheffield Wednesday in the bottom 2 because everybody knows the disaster that has been, the off-field issues that has happened to Wednesday over the last 6 weeks, never mind, over the last 6 years, that has caused this real ripple through the club that has really come to a head this summer, where we've seen the departure of key players so many times that they've not been paid, so many issues that have seemed to keep coming through. But when you strip it back to the way that, and I'm a United fan. Everybody knows I'm a United fan. So some Wednesday fans will discount everything I say. Some people will think that I just talk rubbish because I want to try and laugh at Wednesday. And that's not the case. In this scenario in particular, the main thing is that you get rid of Chansiri. And as a city, we need to get rid of him because this isn't about football and the impact on Sheffield Wednesday. It's about actually there are friends, family, people, normal people living in Sheffield who aren't getting paid, who are turning up to do a job and then not getting anything for it. And that is a disgrace. So everything I say from this point onwards is going to focus on the football, but we shouldn't get away from that being the key message of that's still got to change regardless of what happens next.
100%.
However, when you actually look at Sheffield Wednesday at the moment, last season they finished in mid-table of the Championship. Since their relegation from the Premier League in 2000, they have very rarely finished in mid-table in the Championship. On the pitch, they are arguably as good as they've been in 25 years in terms of how they've taken it forward, in terms of what they'd started to build up until last season. You then say, they've had some departures over the summer. We don't know what's going to happen with the future of Barry Bannon. We know that they've lost Michael Smith, Josh Windass, Gassama and Masaba. They are a big part of the squad, but they've still got the crux of the team that played last season and that for a majority of last season looked like potentially flirting with the playoffs. They've still got the base of that. They have got some exciting youngsters coming through like Rio Shipston, like Piers Charles, like Kadamatri up front, where they actually have started to bleed them into the team anyway. They were getting minutes towards the end of last season. Piers Charles had already become the number 1. There is a reason to think about some of these players as being ready to play in the Championship. And so suddenly you start to look at a starting 11, of which I think you yourself said, Gab, about 9 of them at least are decent Championship players who would be competitive, who would be able to take a team forward. You then look at the managerial, and there has been so many questions about Danny Roll. Is he going to stay? Is he going to leave? He has tried his best and done everything within his power to get another job. And nobody has wanted him for whatever reason that is. But nobody has taken him on. And so he's currently back at Hillsborough, somebody who we know is a very good manager at Championship level. And if he leaves, they've got Pedersen waiting in the wings, somebody who's committed to Hillsborough, committed to Wednesday, and clearly sees himself as being a long-term manager for the club. And so despite all the off-field issues and mess and problems, I actually think on the pitch, there are some reasons to think that Wednesday aren't just a write-off. Do I think the season will be fun? No. Do I think they're going to be a really good Championship team? No. But do I think they could be competitive at the bottom to try and start to pick points away, to get themselves in the conversation for staying up? I actually do think there's a decent chance of that because I think they've proven themselves to have a manager who's competitive, who can make a team who are cut adrift and written off at the bottom of the Championship perform well above their level. Danny Roll did that 2 years ago. We then saw a squad that was built to be a mid-table Championship team. They've still got a multi-million-pound striker in Ike Ugbo, who in the first 6 months he was at Hillsborough had a fantastic run, was a key part of them improving to the point where they stayed up, where they were competitive. If he can find that form again, he can be a good player at the level. There are reasons for hope for Wednesday. And I think that's the key thing for me is there are reasons for hope. And I think everybody writing them off as just being dead and buried, unless a points deduction comes their way, I think they could be competitive. And I am certainly not sat here saying that they should be 100% guaranteed they'll be a League One team because I just don't think that's the case. I think on the pitch, there are enough green shoots that they can be competitive and they can stay up. Whereas I know that seems to be a very at odds opinion to anybody else I've spoken to, which makes me feel real weird. I'm like, am I missing everything? And maybe I'm not putting enough credence on the difficulties off field and the impact that has. mentally, emotionally, on the way that they're going to represent the club and what it actually means to them. If you're not being paid, are you going to turn up on a Saturday and play to your maximum level? Are you going to be motivated to go and above and beyond for everything that the club needs? Maybe not. And maybe that does drag them there and means that they end up absolutely cut adrift. But for me, looking at them as an on-the-field option, I think there's enough there to say they can be competitive. And that's apparently my hottest take of the season.
Yeah, I think. I think if the wage payment issues happens in March, where you've only got a couple more months of the season to go, I think there's a case to say that the players will sort of battle through, and they'll find the solutions at the end of the season. But I think with them happening before the season, if that doesn't get resolved, I think it's going to be a long, hard season for everyone involved. And so it really does all depend on what happens. I think the next 4 weeks are going to be crucial, Ollie, because it's not only would a takeover impact what they can do in terms of incomings and adding to the squad, which they do need to if they want to have a competitive championship squad, but also to pay the players that are there. Because let's not forget, even if we take the assumption, which the 9 players that we've mentioned do stay, which I wouldn't say is a likelihood given the circumstances, you would probably beyond that, there is a lot of youngsters that would have to step up, like a George Brown or a Rio Shipston, and they would have to, the youth would have to do a lot of the heavy lifting. I'll take Bio, I think, defender as well. Yeah. So I think, a lot's going to be dictated by the next few weeks.
And I do think, though, the other thing from my perspective is that there was reports a few weeks ago that there was a takeover, an offer accepted. There's been lots of mixed messaging ever since. But, a lot of the conversation there has been that, Wednesday are for sale, and there is likely, potentially, a new owner coming in. And I do think that would galvanise everything at Hillsborough. And one of the things that we've seen, and in fact, Gab, can I text at you and you say this? Because if I say this out loud on a video, I'm going to like a fool. But we have seen in recent times, I
think you're serious. I was like, I was going with it.
I'll say it, Gab. I'll just get cancelled at Bramall Lane. It's fine. We have seen in recent times that if they can get the positive feeling going through Hillsborough, for example, a new owner comes in and they're really ready to fight against it, they can have a galvanising aspect on what happens at Sheffield Wednesday. The fans can drag them forward. And so if a takeover is completed in the first 3 months of the season, the galvanising impact that will have for the entire football club could be massive. And I do see that as being quite a realistic possibility. I think there will be a takeover. I think there will be a change of owner, which sees the payments sorted, which sees some of the wider issues at the club resolved in a timely manner. And that then gives them a huge platform to just use that good feeling to power them up as well. So alongside a squad that is, for me, light on numbers, but I think at least competitive in the Championship, give that a galvanising impact of a new owner, the rise of fan support that will come through at Hillsborough, come through the entire Wednesday fan base. I think there are reasons for them to think that there is a corner not that far ahead of them. And once they've turned it, they can start to look a bit more positive again. They can start to look up. They can start to see themselves as a competitive Championship team and a team that can stay up this season if they can get those first bits right. And I see that happening. And I do think maybe it's the pessimist in me, but I think they'll get it right. And I do think that come the end of the season, they'll be a hell of a lot closer than most people think, if not able to get themselves over the dotted line.
Interesting. Well, I applaud your reasonable, objective analysis of the situation, Ollie. I think it's a slightly tougher situation than that, but really interesting to hear your thoughts nonetheless.